Hello and welcome. You're watching the top Jewish news channel. My name is Michael Vילενσκי, and my guest today is Josh Rinestein, the president of the Israel Alliance Foundation. Josh, great to have you.
Thank you for having me on the show.
In relation to that, I want to ask you, why should Christians support Israel? Is there a something in the Christian doctrine that should make Christians be pro-Israel?
Absolutely. We're seeing incredible support from Christians around the world, and it's because they believe in something called covenant theology. Now, I have to be very precise. Not all Christians like Israel. Not all Christians support Israel across the board. There's a lot of Christians that believe in replacement theology, that idea that the church has replaced Israel and that Israel is no longer relevant. So what we call evangelical Christians or Bible-believing Christians, these are some of the most important supporters that we have because they believe in covenant theology, which is a theology that they believe that the covenant between God and Abraham is an everlasting covenant, and that we're seeing the fulfillment of that covenant in Israel today. Because their faith is that of what we call the Tanakh, or what they call the Old Testament or the Bible, they're seeing the things that are happening in Israel, like the ingathering of the exiles, the deserts blooming, Israel becoming a light onto the nations through our technologies, as signs that their faith is actually coming alive. And so the support that we're seeing from Christians is a biblical support, which is actually a lot more important than the other types of support that we receive. There's economic support, there's political support, but those things are fleeting. Biblical support is forever. And that's why today we're seeing that faith-based diplomacy, when Christians take their biblical support and turn it into real political action, is the most important weapon that we have in our diplomatic arsenal today.
If we would look at the three main Christian denominations, the Protestants, right, the Catholics, and the Orthodox, which of them would you say is the most pro-Israel, and which ones are the least pro-Israel?
Well, it's very hard to look at it in those three terms. It really depends on those who believe in the Bible and those who believe in what they call replacement theology, that the Bible was replaced by the New Testament. So within the Protestant church, there are streams that believe in replacement theology as well, Methodists, Presbyterians. So the dividing line isn't between what denomination you are; it's how you feel the theology works. So if you believe that the covenant is an everlasting covenant, then you're going to be more pro-Israel. Now, of course, we're seeing a lot more support from the Protestant church and the other churches because they tend to believe in covenant theology more. But we're also seeing, like, for example, in the Catholic Church, a whole new stream of evangelical Catholics, people who believe that that the Jewish people are the root and that they're the branch. And so this is spreading in other denominations of Christianity as well.
And if we look at the Europe situation right now, it's dealing mostly with the same problem that Israel is dealing with. It's dealing with the problem of the Muslim extremist sentiment amongst the immigrants. And also, if we look at Israel, Israel is also dealing with extreme radical Islam in the form of Hamas. Do you think that is a bridge that can help Europe and Israel become closer in terms of their relations?
Yes and no. I think when it comes to Western Europe, they've gone so far down the road that it's too late to turn back. If you look at countries like Holland, France, Belgium, their populations under 18 are majority Muslim. And the non-Muslim populations of those countries don't really have children anymore. They have about 0.9 children per family. So those countries are going to ultimately, I believe, become Islamic countries. As they get more Islamic, and because they're democracies, their leaders will tend to be anti-Israel and more pro-radical Islam. On the other side, there are countries that see this threat of them becoming Islamic countries, and so they're battling that, and we're seeing a push towards Israel. So in Eastern Europe, for example, we see incredible support for Israel for the first time in a long time because they realize that Israel is their ally against the forces of radical Islam. Now, all this being said, still Europe is now shifting towards the right and toward a more pro-Israel narrative. We saw this in the last election in Holland. We saw this in the election in Italy, in Sweden. These countries have shifted towards a more conservative element as the populations are seeing that radical Islam is getting entrenched within civil society. So I think that in the short term, we will see more pro-Israel sentiment coming out of Europe. But it really, in the long term, I think that a lot of Western Europe is going to become Islamic.
So, are you saying that Western Europe is doomed in terms of keeping preserving its culture? Don't you think a possibility of a European revival is really out there?
I mean, look, anything's possible, of course. I'm just saying, what's the most likely situation right now? You would have to have the population have way more children, poorer population. You'd have to have very strict immigration laws. You'd have to have massive deportations. I don't know if Europe really has the stomach for that in Western Europe, but anything's possible at this point. It just the trajectory seems to be in a way that it looks like places like France, Holland, Belgium. I don't see, unless something super radical happens, them changing the course of becoming Islamic countries just because of demographics, the wide immigration, and the birth rate.
I feel that as the situation will become worse in Europe, things that we thought are unimaginable will become very much possible. But you said that the problem with Western Europe and the West in general is that it has become more secular, more atheist, and this is what kind of led to its demise. So, is the cure to that problem a return to Christianity for those countries?
Look, I think that if you look around the world, the countries that are more Christian and more involved in the Bible, which is ironic, obviously, because in our history, the Christians were the biggest threat to Judaism in Israel. Today, the countries that are more Christian are more supportive of Israel. If you just look at the countries that moved their embassies to Jerusalem, America, Honduras, Guatemala, Papua New Guinea, the reasons they moved their embassy is because of that Christian base. It wasn't until the Christians made Jerusalem an issue in America that they put pressure on President Trump to make that move, and that he's agreed to do it. This was a battle since 1995. In Honduras and Guatemala, these are a majority Christian countries that said to their leaders, "We're Christians, we want to move our embassy to Jerusalem." And even Papua New Guinea in September, the president came here and he says, as a Christian, I can't not recognize David's capital, Jerusalem. It would be not true to my beliefs. So as countries are becoming more Christian around the world, and we're seeing this in Africa, we're seeing this in Europe and Asia, they are inherently becoming more pro-Israel. So that if you look at it from an Israel point of view, the rise of Christianity, ironically, is something that's a positive sentiment for the state of Israel.
Josh, as the last question for our interview, I want to ask you a more theological question and less of a political question, right? So you're a person that constantly deals with Christianity, and in Israel, many people are kind of confused with the Christian Trinity doctrine. They feel that in some way it hurts Christianity's stance as a monotheistic religion. Can you explain to us, people who are not that well knowing in the field of Christianity, does the Trinity doctrine make Christianity a polytheistic religion in some sense? And is Christianity really further away from Judaism than Islam is?
So, I don't get into any of those theological questions. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not an expert on Christianity. I just say that we have a lot in common, Jews and Christians. As a Jew who is a practicing Jew, I believe in the Tanakh, and they believe in the Bible, or what they call the Old Testament. I said, let's just work on those things, what we have in common, and the things that we don't have in common. I mean, those are things that we disagree on. So I'm definitely, I don't do interfaith, and I don't do joint Bible studies, and I'm not really concerned with what Christians believe that are not in the realm of the Tanakh. But we believe in enough that's similar, that has brought us together in this fight to defend God's covenant with Abraham. And we're seeing the results in real action politically. And so I think that's what we need to focus on. Ruby Rivlin, when we started the Knesset Christian Alliance Caucus, was speaker of the Knesset. And he always said, you believe in that all the Jews need to be safe and in Israel in order for a lot of your theology to happen. So let's just agree on that part together, and then we'll see what happens when the rest happens, because we may not agree on the rest, but we agreed on the beginning part. So I think that's really what we're focusing on. right now, and it's been a tremendous show of support for Israel.
Josh Rinstein, the president of the Israel Allies Foundation, thank you very much for your interview and for your insight on the Christian support for Israel. Thank you again. Thank you also to all of our viewers that saw this interview. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on all of our social media platforms. Thank you again and have a great day.